Yan da huan do ve san ye je. Shop so dem ba.
Supreme God, who brings to be time. Teacher of all, to you the complete and total life. Destroy. The glorious stronger, the joy and shout of kind. I prostrate my offerings in your grace. To the founder, the endowment, and destroyer, the one gone beyond the focus. Perfect in knowledge. Supreme God of human beings. Teacher of all. The endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious one, the secure from destructive time. I prostrate my offerings for the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being. Perfect in knowledge. The God of knowledge of world, the fully God of human beings. To you, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious longer, the secure from destructive time. I prostrate make offerings with God. When I was supreme amongst humans, you were born in this earth. You paid us in strides, this world. To you, the Lord, wives, I prostrate. With pure bodies, full supremely pure, wisdom, light, and light, golden mountain. Faith that blazes in the three worlds, wonder of the face of the world. Supreme Son, color like gold to you. The three worlds are not, and controls in life. The Savior has a great compassion. The founder has a full understanding. The field of miracles qualities like a to you, the one God, I prostrate. The purity that brings life and protection. The purity that brings one from the Lord. The one found with the one from the other. The doubt that testifies I prostrate. So I liberated and also shown the power of the grace. The holy field qualifies as realization. You are the one to the moral Christians. To use the divine community and to virtue. Homage to the Supreme Buddha. Homage to the Dharma refuge. Homage to the great Sangha. To all three ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, proud of bodies, community of souls, realms, atoms, and all aspects. With supreme faith and faith. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Or virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star of the liberation of the lamp. An illusion that drove to you or above. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioning things as such. Breathing clarity, making dreams, and the sea. Materialized waves of aging, sickness, and death. Page 15. I prostrate to the area triple G. How should any son of the who wishes to practice the activity He's get that when the body starts emptiness is not other than in the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors. Likewise, all phenomena are without characteristic, unproduced, unceased,
So near
statements not
Java
without state, not efficient, not fulfilled. Which are therefore emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no confusion, no harmony, no harmony, no fear, no nose, no tongue, no eye, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no touch, there's no eyelids and so on, up to there is no ignorance and no extinction of ignorance and so on, up to immediately no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and heart. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shaipuja, therefore, because there is no attainment. Bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration is without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of their own. All words prevail the 3 times, also manifestly completely awakened to unparticular perfect complete enlightenment, and relax on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as a truth, should be not false. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is declared. Kayata Gadi Gadi Paragadi Parasamgadi Boy Soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. The entire one arose from their concentration, commended the Bodhisattva Arya of which Shavara is saying. Well said, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you've indicated. Even the clouds rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharapadaputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya of Vichamara, those surrounding in their entirety along with the world of false students of souls and others, are overjoyed and heartily praise that spoken by the Bhagavan. Page 25.
Sanje Chedam Saji Chanam
Chanjo Badu Kanyi Katsuchi
Sage Chujin Jeve Sonanje Tola Penche Sanje Toha Shui Bangi Kuzu Nyuzame Dawa Danje Bari Chiri Dame Shini Dende Wadande La Jade Lo Unye Ninja Zonde Jebe La Chiji Sense Kanje Dende Chana Bema Dende Jebe So De So Shin Dende Do Shio Pande Zave La Maraboshi Sage Jogoro Bende Dejone Kade Jime Kone Jizonde Kuzon To Jemudo Dedo So Da Munzo Tirin Sadawaki Zinda Tongma Kuzura Ne Mixe Tanda Jawara Machine Zenyo Lekshe Losa Mikji Rwa Tari Otiko La Tuere Dadi Tari Munzo Kasore Tangbo Le Tangbo Da Lobjon Nangchu Tingwe La Konyon Menjoy Na Yagushivore Nia Ngara Ko Nangba Chu Mambu Konyon Joy Na Ya Adina La Chikasore Chi Chidang Ko Dewo Yo Chigla Ya Ya Chenbo Yo Ding Sawo Yo Nya Chi Shivuji Ya Chi Getu Medin Yo Chi Yaguji Nyore De Jawram Chi Rangi Da Jazunan Yo Ke Chabe Jireswa
This Monday class, the first of which is about or upon the text composed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, opening the eye of new awareness. It is excellent for those who are beginners in Buddha Dharma, those who have not yet heard Buddha Dharma, it's very good. But even those who have heard a lot of Buddha Dharma before, although it's kind of like an easy summation, it's very vast and deep. It's excellent, and it's, of course, composed by His Holiness himself.
Tange Langzo Kunong Komdis Jabra, Kunong Komis Jab Tadre, Ananzo Ya, Yang Jara Dindegi Chu, Tangaranzo Mangbuchi, Gawaramachin Jela, Kawayo, Samano, Gawaramachin Chik Janasan. Any Jaga that Chuni in Sheje, that Kadukdela, Chitsawara, she desi, was a younger measure. Tangunegi, Tadangaranzo, Munegi. Yawarmachin Zamshan Yogi Bejatas or Lobjon Chen, and Nimanimena ya Susu some Dandanga like Chetovina. Yawarmachin, Nimatawarish Jeva than Chiguaris. Nimatawarish soon did some dandu, Susu Mizena. Paduine, Nimatawarish Yawarmachin. Sing with Dingla, Jejevere, Tele, Yomar.
It's important first that we cultivate a good motivation. Of course, we are pleased. It is good for us to meet His Holiness. We like to meet him directly, and then for some time we get some kind of exceptional feeling having done so, and that might last a bit. However, really, if we are to study the text that His Holiness composed and study it day by day, that's also like meeting His Holiness every day. Because why? Because it's almost like we're hearing the speech. And then in terms of that deep mind connection, there's nothing better than that.
Chugi Dewa Shaviorwa, Lamada, Chugi Dewa, Aranzo, Zambuling de la Sanje Mamboji Chamberwa. And Sanje Pedu number diamond Payangore, and the Jormache, and Nambagi Cheresik, Namdu, Jawadu Guseva, Jawadu was the number Kelenchigiore. That Sanje Bungo Jig Chu Songshan Yodi. Also tari meze de la jawa de la ani chi lobjong chewe twe sam chewe yinza an jawa shawe yores jawa ro ngla zo yang chi chue gen jawa chawe yores ro
Also, in the context of Dharma, connecting to Dharma through the Lama, many Buddhas have come to this world in many different aspects. The aspect His Holiness appears in is as Chinrezig, in the form of Chinrezig, in that manifestation of Tuku. So in this life, to be able to connect by meeting and studying and hearing, one is making that Dharmic connection.
da dinde inde onzo dinde ge chue ta chimbo de tare chue nyemba de ni rani chi go ge tanda dwe ma yin ba rang la che de ge ka de chewe ni phama ni ge sim je shin tham je la pemba dwe ge che de ni nge chue de ni sam kom nyam len chi gi sam je odin de si guno yang wo ji je sho sra
Correcting one's intention that one is going to listen to this Dharma, not just for you, but for the benefit of all of the kind Father and Mother sentient beings, each one of whom has been one's parent. So when you hear the teaching, when you listen, when you reflect on it, when you meditate on it and practice it, do that with that motivation to benefit them.
야, 다 가오 곰 드린 거는 저 이제 직 투기 중간에 겨워서 뭐 이제 가오 공부를 했어.
Now rejoice that one has the opportunity to listen.
Oh yeah, that 단다. 다 공수 쪽에 된주의 맞제도 당고 쳐버줘봐다 좀바 탐져야지. 아니 흉을 써. 대전 스무살에 맞송인 것도 쓰라.
Mhm.
음.
So when the text was composed by His Holiness, there's first a homage and a recognition of the source and the promise to compose the text, and then the outline of what the text entails.
다 당고 쳐려도 넘버지 차세바디 아니 쳐려도 넘버지 다도 이실 차세로서. 쳐려도 넘버지 다도 이실 세야데 다 내로 다도 또베스. 산지주기 이시디 소리. 다 이시제라나 하샤바디 지든 잠배양스고로. 단다 여러분이 이시랑라 차 첼로세디 아니 저 가서 수수 된주 점이야가 아니 시럽 인데 이 진로용하던 딘데기 고베치드 아니 차세기 요래로.
Now, in the text, under the title, The Need for Religious Practice, what His Holiness does first is pay homage. Here, he pays homage to wisdom. So homage, the text reads, homage to the final exalted wisdom that thoroughly differentiates phenomena. Here, His Holiness is paying homage to that exalted wisdom, and it is encompassing the temporal and ultimate natures of things. Really, one would pay homage here to Manjushri, but here, due to the blessing of dependent arising, His Holiness pays homage to wisdom itself.
다니워디 좀바 탐져봤으나리 균제암 거바도 시기요래로.
Yeah. Next comes the purpose, or why the text was composed, or the pledge. You know, what's the purpose?
그래서는 다델라 덤바 남리 시와스도 다자 덤바 샤제드베 덤바델라 덤바 남리 시와스
That
그래요.
again.
남리 시와스도 다자 덤바 샤제드베 ngajawa 차주 추림지 리우스도 다 단달류 다자 덤바 샤제드바 산제베 내가도가 다좀베 리우스로. 아니 지금 냠렌체 다좀바 톱려야 되는데 마오시오 좀 거로.
Yeah.
안데네 디 다좀바 톱해야 돼 용으로 도네 아니 치몽도 또 봐야지 톱해요. 남로 죽된 줄인데 되네 치몽도 또 봐야 돼서 파고래 와. 근데네 셔럽지베 다 추베데 동이도야다 셔럽 먹고 도고지야 되네 띵인지 먹고 도야 다 되네 추림지 단대대 추림지 리우스와 단대 먼저 리우디 추림지 리우 이메 추림지 리우 기갑데스와 튜럽 뉴슈가로 먼저 튜럽이나 다 튜럽 뉴슈버도 뉴슈자직 또 진로거라 튜럽 뉴슈자직이라다 봐 튜럽 뉴슈자직보다 디 다자 튜럽 뉴슈에 제 전스다 제단 천当저 제릭다 면도당 아니 천자 다면도 페이지 체베 딱 개베 튜와 아니 튜델라 칭모웨링네로 다 칭모웨링네 페이지에 쉬워지 배중 심바당 단다 중심바레스로 아니 딘데 갑들라 아니 나상 나게 셈게 페이지에 다야디 렌직대로 와 칭모부 야제도야당 튜냠도 나게 셈디 야제 동거디 개초지 아니 고바딘데직 통송서 그래와 고바딘데직 통송서 고바데래와.
So what His Holiness does here is outline the purpose of composing the text, recognizing the teacher, the fourth leader or the fourth Buddha amongst the many Buddhas that will come as Shakyamuni Buddha, and looking at Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching in stages, 10 periods of 500 years. Of those 10 periods, we're in the phase of ethics at the current juncture. So when Buddha first taught, he taught, the first phase was teaching arhats. And then he would teach those that got a path immediately, and then like lesser arias, if you will, and then wisdom. There was a period of 500 of like wisdom and concentration. We are now at the period of ethics, when ethics is highlighted. But also commensurate with that is this 21st century, when the prevalence of chemicals, these outer things, outer developments is very strong, meaning these outer advancements. But His Holiness highlights that what is also important, Nansem, is the simultaneous development of the inner mind. And that's more important, almost.
Nangbe chingwer je dowa da nyamde na singwer je dogo ina da singwer je doya ge chi lobjon chi sa chkorwa da
yeah
lobjon chi ya de ta nangde ri ba le wa nang ba sanje be ni chö ge dinala ya ne thoba da samba gomba chi wa de ta kejum mu cha go res de chu she go res ni thö go yo res da dinde nangbe shung de haja ya chen bo wa ani shung chen bo da haja subject the sawa gyachimbo lingwa tindeji indu gyachimbo shung gyachimbo tinde tayala khomba mebe cherwa tande de jungaranzo tingza mizangwa tinderwa
sona memberwa
tindela khomba mebe ani kyo sona memberwa sona member chö gyachimbo toyage koga menye dozola ya ani ji chöre de namje ji da sherab geage koga 야고지 영향을 체도 에네 단다 덴주에디 칙뉴뉴 코데오 아니 지 코데오 카세오 아니 지 로 드절래야 지다 추르 남지기 미게야 다네 덴데지 최등에 다 덴주디 마 세긴 소르다 게 그거 좀 덴티르다
So in that context, if the development of inner mind is important, commensurate with these outer developments, then there has to be hearing, reflecting, and meditation, or thought and meditation, with Buddha Dharma as its basis. In short, one needs to study, one needs to know, one needs to hear, one needs to meditate. In that context, the Buddha Dharma is very vast, very deep, very profound. But people are not used to its vastness, on the one hand, or secondly, they don't have the opportunity to study it in its depth, nor the merit. So, because that's the case, His Holiness sets out to compose for those beings something that is accessible, audible, something that has little words or few words, but is easy to understand and is a method for opening the wisdom eye. So His Holiness states, I will compose that, I will write that. So now comes the third of our three headings. There was the homage, then the promise to compose or the purpose, and now the actual text itself. That's good. So therefore, if it was stated that in context of Dharma, one needs to, cultivate discriminating wisdom, then what's, with that is the reason for practicing Dharma, whereas it says here the need for religious practice. No.
심지 탐지에라다 로와세고로와 로와리툭세와 로 탐지에라 대화되어 동해메데버 냠바레스탕나서다 다디 칙도조 코데워도 디 운조다 도 냠린라 냠린치엘라다 디 롭존지고 멤버체로 디 칙디 더 탐지에서 라윈디 어다 먼저 직 대바되니디 미지고레면도 서와 튼도도 조리샤스 튼도레다 튼도 링 망고 쉬어줘요 아니 저저 장마에 대바되죠 동해면되죠 콘솔레 초와요 되봐 이거 봐 말하는 신 초와디도 유되봐 어딘데지 레샤스 냠바레 송용도 어다데 딘데지 세미나라 먼저 현재네你们草原上了街头的呢，就是演员的米都是上嘛，我说几百吧，我说电话对吧几百，东西米对吧几百，啊你几多几团队都是以内，人家电话对吧几百，东西米对吧几百来想上当的，啊你几排商家几苦脚家年纪同学上去，你什么了？几招来啊？当部几操起来了吧？
Yep.
아무도 아직 예 초와 유니지리 상상 당고디 틱디 뉴뉴지레 요 말들레 다가랑랑 저 삼로 망보다 유된 유지레도 하러
His Holiness begins by saying, all sentient beings of the six realms are equal in that they want happiness and do not want suffering. Here, it's very easy to say, but it is not just that one says this, one must practice it. And in order to do that, this is not just study, one has to put it into practice. Because when you mention something like all sentient beings, all migrators, as it is in the Tibetan, there are animals as well are included in that. So then there are just so many classes of animals as well. And to know that they have feelings just like oneself and all equal in the point that equally they want to be happy and do not wish to suffer. And if one can come to know that in the context of this life, that all beings are the same as oneself and that they, not just humans, want to be happy and do not wish to suffer one bit, but also animals want to be happy and do not wish to suffer either. Then when one sees such beings, such as insects, one will have this affection and love for them, thinking, oh, it's a sentient being, it has feeling. So here, it's just a small sentence, small words, but there's a lot to think about there.
아디 어디게 균진라 삼로단에 디고래 디오디로
No.
디양 랑레 시릭다에 미자마세스 말로 시릭다오 미신이데 남주게 셔러 망고지 여러
Yuri.
대자마세 아니 룬신 디모바 룬보 디모베 아니 타나 소자 부신 탐문인제 장 아니 대워시 되와 당스라
No.
네 탐무자에 미도가 샤다레 균진 시행 거다 그러
His Holiness goes on to give a reason that this fact that all beings want to be happy, do not wish to suffer, this does not apply merely to us humans of higher intelligence. All, even dumb and obscure creatures, from the tiniest insect on up, only want happiness and do not wish even a little suffering.
다 균진 심바직시고 단다데 균진 직시에서
No.
테나세도 다 균진 심바직시고 테나 라신 수인이야 라신 수 랑다신 수 당하다 말레신베 미 먼저 디 삼로 디 디타마드나나 지 가져오래 이게 간대 책만 뭐지 네 랑다 신세들이 마다 네 영예인을 믿어서 먼저 네 대화직 총나 삼바다 동해지 미충나 시베 탑 식다 자고 그래서 와 자고 그래서 다 수수 대화직 총나 삼 동해지 미충나 삼에 대화 총회 대외 규도가 다 동해 미주는 동해 동해 두야기 시직 자고 그러면서 아니 대면은 랑라 대화식 중요한 것도 동해 탐험자 미주냐는시 제 NB 갈서름 국제 대제와 상로로 자 배전으로지 마체베체 겨워지 중나 아니 동해지 마초나 삼제 멸람라고 겹 레워라고체 딘데 대제 대대나 대화 영화 말에 동해세게 요 말에 서봐
Next reasons come, as Holiness goes on. Therefore, everyone, ourselves and others, must find a method to cause happiness to arise and keep suffering from arising. This notion here then of self and other, even though we may do daily recitations and prayers, commitments, and pray a lot, and even thinking of from your own point of view that you want to be happy, you want to accomplish that, and have a method to get rid of suffering, if that is just talked about, but you don't actually cultivate it as a basis or a method, then it's not going to be of much benefit. Then it would be impossible to cultivate happiness and get rid of suffering merely by praying or wishing for it.
그러다 먼저 지 몰람자 아니 삼련안에 당연한 상물로 봤어요. 지금 동해 맞추나 대화 추나 삼제다 대거 얻을래. 티 삼로 된대지 거버 삼지 대화 연구 말에 동해 세도요 말에 다나 삼로 가르당 거래라나 대화 중국이나 대화 중에 교가래도 봐. 유튜브 같은 거 봐. 대화 관계 연구도 와서 봐. 네, 그래서 지금 지금 류기대와 지금 기회여라 봐. 류대와여라 니 규정 가르고도. 아니 알아서 뒤에 나와데 데데데 칼라사다. 아니 지금 니 양고야 류제제야 어디 디저릭도서 대전 숨로지 류대단라 조체고라 류대단 두야게 테나네다 디제 시와디 가래라나 심 개점 쉬우차고라 심디 아니 인지 시대당 파괴당 야고지 여나 류라 지금 류메데와 여베이네 쉬워지게 강에데 축축 첨부 마셔라 편도 유되어지게 되어라 최소한 대화 중에 유디 당고 류대당 두야라 samudaya. Tene ta kechechu de sim de dan du yabe. Sim ge de dan du chola ani de du ya ge tapshi ro. Dewa du ya da dungye bo ya ge tapti. Ta chöle de ne du re mi ji ge. Ting du chiri ge lo jön chen ni. Sim de dan du tu ya mi do. Ro. Ani melam gyabje de ne du du ma re ro. Melam gyabje de ne du du ma da sem da. 제단다 딜라 가지고 그러나 아니 법정 체험으로 망쳐를 되네 누구래서도 낭저 주고의 준전 시행보다 대로
So in that sense, then one can't cultivate happiness and get rid of suffering just by praying and waiting. Well, how nice it would be if I did not have suffering, waiting for it to come about. Just doing that won't come. A kind of waiting attitude. So first, one needs to look at the causes in terms of the method behind what accomplishing bliss and happiness is, and commensurately ridding oneself of suffering. So then one can look at it in terms of body and mind. So there are certain causes we need to have health physically, or a good body, such as food, exercise, and sleep on a causal level. But more important than that is mental peace and like a mental confidence. But it's important to take care of the body, because if the body is ill at ease, it is not so good. However, in terms of the body and mind, the important for mental peace is the method for mental peace is more important than that for the body. And then if we were to ask, what are the methods behind cultivating mental peace, and that we want to accomplish happiness and do not wish to suffer, that is where it comes in the practice of Buddha Dharma. It is not through external things like science, not through prayer. You can't cultivate mental happiness by those modes. It is by studying Buddha Dharma, practicing. Yes.
제자다 추기 탑줄의 신배 탑신다게 아니 생비디지 두두 말해와 두두 말해 제자 타 디인디 다 추셔야 돼 그래 추셔야 돼와 추셔야 돼 가래 라비온디 아니 추셔야 돼 교화담에 특질라 교화담에 들라고 그래 야 추셔야 돼 지당기 추응올래 라니 모든 추셔고로
Yeah.
안다 낭추셔야 그 추디 네 교화담에 들어와 주주당에 들고 주주 가르당 거라서데 심 상보 매버디 상보서야 와. 심 야고 매버디 야고서야. 심 야고 여버디 야고 숙처로 다야 와. 누가 숙처로 다야. 와다디 아니 낭베 슝나네 수주 심 연대 매버디 연대 여었어요. 견 여버디 매었어요. 와. 연대 여버디 공내 공도 패야. 그래야디 아니 추딩의 용의인자 디치와라다 추 장고래 쇼롭좀 최고요래 제자디 최고의 군제 배자청부 송도 알아.
Then we conclude that it is the Dharma, the practice and study of Dharma, that is the method for cultivating and accomplishing mental happiness, mental well-being, none other than that. And then if we ask the question, what is Dharma or what is Chö, then that word Dharma, it can mean to change, to transform. Of course, there is this other explanation that which holds its own entity. But in the context of Buddha Dharma, in terms of practice, it means to change or transform. To transform and change what? Invalid states of mind to valid ones, bad states of mind to good states of mind, so that normally that one wouldn't have had good qualities of mind, latterly one does, and one's faults are transformed into valid states of mind that are positive emotions. And not only that transformation, but to make sure that this increase more and more in the mind. That's the practice of Buddha Dharma.
제자다 추 두베이나 아니 추기 띵네 세도와 제자 딘데기 추 냠네 연데 연데 매버디 요스 견데 요버디 매버스 연데 세디당와 아니 추 띵네 세디당 겨워치마당 디야 겨워치메 치마 망고라야 아니 대화제 투비야 딘데 이문이야 동해세 투비야 딘데 용그레 세로다 대송으로
And then it is said that one undergoes that transformation that was talked about in context of Dharma in this life of reducing faults of mind and negative tendencies and cultivating and increasing positive tendencies of mind. This life, future life, from life to life, so that ultimately bliss is reached and suffering is removed.
아니 세델라 천나야 대화께와 동해 본월라 출을 하고 지금 요말레스다 데 세델 겨워치마다 지마 파션이 세델라이나 아니 지 대화 수술라 디기요야다 아니 동해 본야 그러다 디기세데 셈네 두고라 아니 동해세데 셈네 세고요라 제가 딜 아니 출을 하고 지금 요말레스다 딜라 베샤나도 여러분이 베나서와 아니 룰라 나자지 중나 아니 베나 나자 요와 찍바체로와 찍라 캔셀가 나자 요와 찍바체 아니 추그네데 똑바다 마도베 니라 아니 루심지 동에 치중다 아니 디세 뉴미기 켜버라 신도 첨부 요래서와 추그네로 똑바다 마도베 니기 버르라 아니 지 캔셀가 나자 찍바지 갸이나요 지 요레스페나 추그네드 마도바다 추기다 진랍 추라 이제메와 추기 진랍 이제딘데 메니 미데 네 루지네 나자 타고지 나리온데 아니 심라야 텔레 미세베 동에 첨보지 내내로 루심인가게 네 대화제하게 그거 매베 아니 동해 바시게 베 나르제베 동해 제베 동해 가나 동해 류기 나제가나 싱그 수제 동해 시제니 다들 가서 통해도 와 망고 통해도
Mm.
배 통해 망고 배 통해도 배 망고 통해도 스로 같은데
Now, leaving alone the notion of cultivating that long-term welfare of mental well-being for future lives, even just in the context of this life, there's nothing that surpasses practicing Dharma for bringing about mental well-being and abandoning suffering. And His Holiness gives the example of a person facing sickness, meaning that there's a great difference between those who are practicing Dharma and have some insights when they become sick, and those that have no spiritual practice or who are not practicing. An example of the cancer, for example, a fierce cancer. If a person who is not, who has no insight and faces this physical suffering of cancer, there is that physical, but also there's a possibility they will be overwhelmed mentally as well. So in addition to feelings of strong physical sickness, the great suffering of not being able to mentally bear that illness. So they're troubled by both physical and mental suffering with no opportunity for happiness. Yes.
제가 베나 나이사다 미가시 연구도 아니 다 견세게 다 견세레샤스 다 시야레샤스와 저 니마다 직니 둘다 직니레 민두시야로 아니 시갈라보다 랍자자로시스 라고도
Yeah.
다디 땡엘라 베체게 된데 이제다 최라 음시제 매니지라 계속 시야시라면도 알아
Yeah.
직 삼바 시버체 수 대변내주라 가와 공지 되어면서 쉬우쉬지 시에스케면도 알아
Yeah.
다 두균의 겨왕아지 라 최라 이제 요당 두균의 된대게 삼로 최게 거도요 예지이나 아니 랍자페 망고자도 알아
Larilla.
랍자페 망고자도 다 최게 거도 매니지라 랍자 망고지 잡네 고스 심 스틸링빌링 차그러면서 다 제요 뭐라 심나라 지 바자로 제 메디 다 시글라버들 라베 요 뭐라다 그 배디 가서 오래 치코랑 라마토가 되대로 아니 제가 어디 단단하라베디 아지 다디 너만에 전화돼서 제로잖아 다 전화마시디 제미도 와서다 그러게 지금 melon라도 인지로 제시 대야면서 지금 표기 두균의 성능ችን 마다니 미질라 랍지 자스 케민도 시라 샤스 케민도 로
Yeah. For example, if some people approach me with a terminal illness, such as cancer, saying that they've been diagnosed as only a week or a few days to live, you know, if they don't have a background of Dharma, best case, you can advise them to have a peaceful mind and rejoice in the good things they've done in the past. Apart from saying that, there's not a lot you can say because there's no background. Conversely, if the person has had some experience of Dharma in the context of believing in past lives and had some practice around Dharma, one can say a lot more. You know, one has a lot more ground. But the former person, because there is no imprints, there's nothing really a lot to say. One can't kind of introduce at that stage a lot of Dharma advice. And then one can even think, oh, if only they had had interest before in Dharma, then there would be some advice to give, but that's not the case.
제가다 최근에는 똑바시기 이나송도 하다 그렇아 룰레네나자 추원니다 저수지 응원사베 레지 되브리 삼바다 호란 신이게 내당 통에 다 삼다야 아니 수수 셈제 신이 탐제 동해 탐들라야 라소가다 냠네 삼로 망부다 요러와 영루다네 류그나자데 탄도 냠네 숙진부진이 류그나제 대화제야가나 배 기야다 chanju 셈 경에 chanju란디케 경에 바디 닝지 슈치로다 다든데게 영리 쉬우지야요라 다르와 여러 제가
But for that person who has a background in Dharma, let's say they get very physically sick, one can share the notion in terms of their practice of past karma rightening, rightening on the body now. And secondly, that's just the nature of cyclic existence. Thirdly, one can encourage the person to take on with that illness the sufferings of all beings, so that then that physical sickness can actually become a method for well-being and bliss in terms of taking adverse conditions into the path of enlightenment. And those adverse conditions can be a means to cultivate greater compassion. Yes.
그래서 셈게 이니 뉴바디 슈크첨보이나 루그나자디 파 스르기네 투리아와 루그나자디 매워서마도나 슈크충다야 슈크처럼 마음마서 슈크충으로 다야 된데 야자 야용고요 레스로 다딩어도 추글로좀 제외기 편 당다 제거의 금진 된데 인자 당어도 금진 된데 어느 상물로 강이 매웠어야 그 배전 최고의 다 강의세에게 탈론데다 주 높좀 제고고요 그래서 제거의 금진이 펜도 된대요 그래서 펜도에는 어느 높좀 제고로 와서
Here it's being said that it is a mind that outshines a body, meaning it overpowers that 100%. And if not outshine in terms of the mind kind of being more potent than the physical sickness, at least it will reduce the symptoms of that physical sickness. Here, then, we see the reasons to practice Dharma. And in that light, we practice Dharma to be able to reduce our suffering. To that end, we need to study Dharma, and then we need to know that if there is benefit from studying Dharma, from practicing Dharma, we need to study how to do it.
그래서 딩어네라지 낭배추 다 안에 뒤준지 수수시야 삼다야다 안에 이제지 할라노 고미야던데 이 냠니 유니던데 이나다 시갈라보들 양암다로다 된데 그 강에 유배 가둘라 아니 먼저 계제시도 쇼펜도 연구도 하대 연구도 하고 가시 배 털 내려와다 강에만 오시도 털지 전부지에 대해서 차대데 네가도 될라 시갈라고 될라 와다
나를라.
아니 먼저로 돈에 먼저 계제 좀 마시는데 쇼지 펜도 전부 용되고 알아
So, in context of Buddha Dharma, when, before death, if people have done these experiences or have some background meditation or visualizing themselves as the Yidam, as the deity. But then again, the conditions around death, let's say there is a kind of scattering and the person is quite worried, but then, worried in the sense that they lose their concentration, we can say and advise such things to them because they have that background. That is tremendously beneficial, reminding them.
아마 단다디 빌리님나 뭐지요래 그래서 뉴질랜드 낭바 당부인이라고도 아마데 마데니니 라이레 마데니 뭐지요래 뭐라지다 오늘 냠렘바 이거는 냠렘 쉬우치다 계속 가는 데로 앞에 호스피스 가는데 인고데스는데 나 빌리는데도 양생에서 투가로 걸어 이마지다 답변이 털시았다 그러 냠렘 상마 털시았다 민도스 셈는 동고동이야 아니 시야를 시기도 그러 뭐 이세도 아니 하고 워다 뒤에는 저 여자 뭐 그런 제레스라 내저 냠렘 시라지고요 아니 하잖아 아니 님도를 검자고 제레스 검자 아스 마 제레스 검다디게 마 라이언데 제가 내 찾아 말라군에 뭐 내라고 다 디스 다 랩스 상마치 랩스 배우레스 다이는 랩스 다 랩스 뭐라 찾아 라고 면도 마트지 라우다 님도 공제도 다 랩스 상마 랩스 땅에 곰 상마 랩스 가지 체스 아니 뭐뭐 디링들라 베데 사뱀바로 님마라진다 부 상마 가와 땅 이제 다 저랑도 대아스 라지 산인데 가사 뱀발로 투라 뭐 니메니가 뭐 베비지 십차데 가와시 땅도 당 인자 상을 대야 땅아 도위네 사다웨니가 뭐 총선다
Okay.
이 딘데게 뒤윤에 이 상로에 예제나 책 뒤에서 망고 라고면 유뉴지 라우다 남상코베 가자로 지 랩도도 다디 하나 거에서 뇨된 거로 거에서 통된 거로 세상 그래서 저런서 단다 냠린 제와디 시간 라고들라 자자자 펜도 요네기도 없으러
I became acquainted with one woman in Blenheim. She was, I think, one of New Zealand's first Buddhists. Anyway, she got sick.
마드리
Marjorie Baker, I know, yeah.
Hmm.
Marjorie Baker, and she ended up in a hospice. And at one stage, I met her, and she said she had lost her practice. She couldn't focus, that her mind was empty, like empty, completely gone. And then she said, I'm scared. So then I said, well, let's do the Chenrezig practice together. So we did begin the Chenrezig practice, and we didn't do all of it. We'd gotten halfway, and she put her hand up and said, it's okay, I've got it now, it's come, thank you. So she had remembered the practice. And then following that, she actually died on the Monday, but on the Saturday, she was phoning all her relatives saying, this is it, I'm going now, like saying her goodbyes. But then from that, what I saw was that there's not need to say a lot to activate the imprints. And this I directly saw, the 100% proof that if you practice it at death, there's benefit in context of Dharma.
제가 다른서 당물로 최지에 다 강의 치슈디 아니 지 룰은 내서 총 심라 지 마주가 총 당 개지슈디 걔가 나지시 다 10에 동에데 도슈지래 밀라로 디네가 될라 아니 상로단단게 지 펜도 중규 중나 다디 야고 말해로 다디 빼야고로 알아
Now, in terms of our Dharma practice, what is difficult for us is when we get physically sick and how we handle it mentally, from amongst the four of birth, aging, sickness, and death. It is the death that's difficult for us. But if we have a method and words that can benefit, wow, that's so great.
어디 딘데 인자 류다 심니기 나네 송도 심디 류로원 유미 조다 위지레스 자르미데 송도 데레 와다 왜네즈 다라레 데 군디 자 이신우데 네마 송도 류디 심로원 유제다베와 다 원 유제다 유제 저란도다 지단다 로저 친년 싱기르데 뽕보다 요구나시로다 심디 뽕보나 신다 니 류디 요구나 신지레다 제가다 뽕보 요구라 칼로 주르면 요구 뽕보야 가지고 말아라 제가다 디신고래 간도 디신고래 내단 디신고래 했어.
So His Holiness goes on to say, the reason for this is that between body and mind, the mind controls the body, so to speak, and the body is as if under the control of the mind. So with that in mind, it should be the case that it's like the mind is the boss and the body is the helper, and that should be the case. It should not be the case that one is at the behest of the body, meaning that the body is the boss and the mind follows.
오야 다드네마 아니 지단게 tonda 저런서 어디네마 최최고의 준제디제디 말 땅에 지단 지금 로모 저런서 로샤비나 아니 코데고도 스와 임디네야 치 코마데오든데도나 아니 준비하지마 뒤워지 요와 근데 저런도 뒤워든데요나 뭔데는다 온라인 가 나도 가지 닝게 요레스와 어디 술은 닝게 랍선스 콘서 가지 유지레스 아니 저런도 뒤워요나 렌시티 단달리 뒤워 티쇼스로 랭고스 뒤워요나 뒤워체 아무도 드린 최지급의 균진디 대 군주의 세부 휴지 송송하다 대 나도 삼로 당와 아니 디 워기 시카마디게 매 디니 최 시급의 균진에 다초 가르친 거래라디 아니 덴바니 신고래서디 다 된다제마
얘는
이제
고소.
덴바니 가는 거고 대강게 책디게디 저런 말로 네 하먹거나 제일 티오티나 디그리 저런 난공 파지 드링 채나이 디그리 대대시 말로셔는 코데고도 하더라
Now, the purposes and reasons to practice Dharma, or as it says here, the need for religious practice, it is clearly written here in this text. Oh, sorry. Well, it begins on page 21, goes right through actually. Bottom of page 21 and then goes through to 22. So I encourage you to read this. And if there's anything in that first passage, probably, yeah. Kia wachima di kole yomara jima. Kia wachima.
말로 네 하먹거나 제일
Yeah. So yeah, please include reading on rebirth and so forth. Anyway, up to the two truths, page 29. So because His Holiness has introduced the purpose of practicing Dharma, but then how does one actually engage in the practice of Dharma? For those that are listening online, some of you expressed an interest in studying this course. So anything that you're not sure about in that first passage we just mentioned, please read, go through it, write your questions down and address them to me and or discuss them amongst yourselves. And next week we'll go through how to practice in terms of the two truths. Yeah, so all up to that, two truths on 29, please read it. And anything that's unclear, bring it as a query. Yeah, it should be clear, right? It's very clearly written. Any questions now? Britta?
At the beginning, when you said what is Dharma, the second part you said, Geshe-la that what holds
its own entity.
Explain that,
Yeah.
please?
So the question was, at the beginning, there was the point, what Dharma is. And the second part was that which holds its own entity. What does that mean? Chugi ngozim barwad. You turned up this.
최주 단다데 라니 ngozimala
Oh, rangi ngozim bagomba.
라니 ngozimala 연디 ngobo 가리이네와 내가 찍라 빼는 거저 탭지도 와대 탭데 단다 두 스텝으로 쳐야 되도와 다그 파야부 세르데 그런 게 düdün şu rangi ngodese dele degora şu 가리이네 그런 rangi ngodela şu 현직을 로니 ngotsul rangi ngodela degiores rangi 신다 마데오 뭐 신다 마데베시 내가 먼저 파주 뚜루다네 아니 즉 제대로 줘야래서 이나야 타도나 라니 뭐 마데베시 라니 뭐 찍찍 마데베시 라신신다 마데와 대대요래서 빼나 뒤타 빼나 탭들 차샤위나 독스탄다 즉 제다 즉 빙다 망고직 때문에 슈구스여제 탭차래서 대게 누가디게 예스나는 슈구드 베파 번에 탐에게 뉴덴디게 도서때 따다 로데게 그래서 그래서 뉴덴디 대야제요 말해서 내가 탭 증언주 미도로 따는 세션이어서 이제 여름에 하도 뭐 가리 있는 그런 뭐 Tela ngoboina tele tigre esro. Tagwayina tagwe ngobo tigre mishi midaba ngobo tigre mare. Midawayina midaba ngobo tigre mishi tagwe ngobo tigre mares. Chesar dana chungsala duden chashi na odinere. Ti samna yor de samna ngobo yor stirwa.
Things that hold their own entity, that which holds its own entity is the definition, that second definition of Dharma. So, for example, with a book, temporarily, that book is the amalgamation of pages, ink, substances, and so forth. Of course, in a deeper level, it's made up of these particles, but we can say, and those particles are always changing, they don't stay. But temporarily, when those things come together, the book holds its own entity. And we can say that's the same with other phenomena that are compound things, their thingness, that they hold their own entity. Of course, it is not the case for permanent things. Permanent things.
Tagwe ngobo tigre mishi midaba ngobo tigre mindo akura.
Yeah, so things that are in the nature of permanence, they're not compound things, so they can't hold that entityness of being a compound.
Ane meina me ngobo tigre mishi chu ngobo tigre mara.
And if it's, for example, a fire, it holds its entity of the qualities of a fire. It doesn't hold the entities of the quality of water.
So
that's what it means for it to hold its own entity. Whatever phenomena compound.
Di samuma ing de samudaya yoro samuma zo lu lu tamanya sha swa.
Yeah.
Lu gi nala ani jongwa chu me long sa chu me long nanga jongwa sha de nanga jongwa sha yoro zo zan korang ge ngo de mi Jua sangam di chugon dia mara chugon sangam dia mara.
Yeah, particularly tende.
Tende mi. Korana ngo de tigris ngo zimba sa di kodon de.
So we can look at this deeper if we look at close placement of mindfulness of body. Of course, we know that the body is the coming together of those 4 elements, or 6 if you include fire, earth, air, water, space, and consciousness. But they are all dependent on each other. But within that interdependence, they hold their own entity.
That's in that only to me there.
Of Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching.
10 phases, yeah.
5. What would be other?
The Tangpo Kundungi, also the question was about the 10 phases of 500 years each of Shakyamuni Buddha's doctrine reign. We got the first ones. What are the latter ones? We're up to the one on ethics, correct? That's what we said, didn't we? Yep. In the Sangichomden Degi Dura, Richard Ongjongar, what? In the Gavaram Shela. Napa there. Napa checker this.
No, it won't check it.
Sutum, what? Sutum Gijela, Karium, the Tamangadi.
Very. Maja Tamangala,
yeah.
That day Tamatama 1000 and be lure, they can't get it. Yeah, which time was on the jail to Najima.
So I can't remember all of the last 5, but the 10th, is that the Dharma exists just in signs.
It's not the Najima.
But the other ones I'll bring next week.
Homework.
That's my homework.
You
have homework, I have homework.
Finishing that.
Gisla Younger, can you say those first 5 again? Gisla Younger, Tampo Nadi.
So
the first period is the period of the Ahats, Nipa.
You are the Chimoro.
And second is the period of the non-returner.
Somebody
The third is the period of the the stream enterer is the third one. Sorry, didn't get this first time. Fourth, Shipa.
The Sharabji.
The fourth is the period of wisdom. And the fifth. and then comes
Thing is in illusion.
concentration,
And then it's hidden.
and then effects.
Concentration are two different ones. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thing is in illusion, shouldn't you know what?
It's just.
Probably.
Ethics
Yeah.
Ethics is the sixth.
Yep.
The sumha, that's chicken it doesn't. That's some.
Well, I have
About 7
three to bring next week. The
Yeah.
last one is like the signs of Buddha Dharma just existing.
Leather leg, the 7 minutes.
Yeah, one is about to come, but it's not clear.
Young be 2 to. Any? Also, the Ningi online.
Is it clear coming through online?
Online sister. Online sister.
Who's on that line?
And
Thumbs up. Uh-huh. Thumbs up. And they shall. It's another the Hamadi, the law shot, the Gandhi channel, the Dini code in the Martis lot of
So- For those that have the text, where it begins on page 21, the need for religious practice, please read up to and including the two truths, but also read a little bit into that chapter on the two truths to prepare for next week. Yeah, I mean, even if within the two truths chapter, if there are things you don't understand, but just to have read it is good. Yeah, because if one reads it and then hears it when it's taught, you'll go, oh, that was that. We'll stop for today.
page 31 and the incredible.
Sangye Shindu Nite Umati Okunanda Shima Chopa Shu
Gujarati Shin Nanga Tine Choju Javato Losan Tembe Domesos Rove Miseda Doni Yushi
Guru Varna Mandala
Due to the merit of these actions.
Yo di you do the Lama Sajo to you do a Jijabana Di Sala for a show. Just enjoy much.
Makes a pretty.
Whenever you say you go on your whenever the family. And there was a change of the Julian and Greece, so and his life is never and just always
Endorsement the person that was saying teach. I now dedicate.
and Yemalis on show that I no, whatever version of the pen and the woman which you have serious and service in their part of the thing.
Training of the son and teachings and transmigrating beings. It makes extremely clear and powerful to the patient and compassion. Told him things and gaps so I could teach. My order holy which can be spontaneous and fulfilled. You who uphold the seduce moral way, service to dance for miracle. Sustaining, preserving, and spreading of Jina's victorious doctrine. Massively accomplishing the different for the three tools. Savior of myself and others who are disciples, please, O great eternal. For I lie into the accumulations of myself and others in 3 times. May the teachings of the conqueror lost and dropped off place for a long time. And secret sheets, with return of Namadurga. Fearless teacher, assembly of the children of the victorious one, brothers and the Buddhas. Victorious one, then father and sons along with the religious masters. All the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the more expressive and complete teachings. Through explanation and practice, you will be on with patience, so that you live with courage. And comparable meaning will be pure. Single-mindedly for the sake of Victoria One's teachings, restore gateways to which all the benefits and happiness are marriage, and for all other living beings who suddenly depart to peace, what a great loss. Nevertheless, through the unreceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of Bodhicitta of the children of Victoria's Ones, by the smile of the reincarnation, swiftly beam in glory for fortunate society.
Good night.
It's not chamber jumps, no?
Ouais.
Madam.